the most difficult and challenging thing about directing a film. Been privileged to direct a film.
Stanley Kubrick is often remembered as the most deliberate filmmaker who ever lived.
You've just been offered the lead in Stanley Kubrick's next film. I had no idea that I was being considered.
He was the man who spent 5 years crafting a single science fiction film. The man who demanded NASA-level accuracy for spacecraft that didn't exist. He was a director who controlled every frame with obsessive precision, who believed that cinema was too important to leave anything to chance.
And his patronage included many of the world's leading artists and statesmen of the time.
But on April 3rd, 1968, hours after the world premiere of 2001, A Space Odyssey,
2001, A Space Odyssey is a challenging film about man's place in the universe.
Kubrick did something that shocked everyone who knew him. He panicked. While critics sharpened their knives and audiences filed out in confusion, Kubrick retreated to the editing room with a single instruction. Cut 19 minutes. Immediately. No discussion, no documentation, no explanation. He never told anyone exactly what he removed. The footage was locked away, hidden from historians and fans for decades. This is the story of the secret 19 minutes. The one moment Kubrick removed because he realized that even a masterpiece could contain the seeds of its own destruction. In 1964, Stanley Kubrick was already a legend. Dr. Strangelove had proven he could turn nuclear annihilation into comedy. Lolita had proven he could adapt the unadaptable.
To do was deal with the mundane level of what was going on with these characters.
Spartacus had proven he could command a Hollywood epic. But Kubrick wanted more than greatness. He wanted to create something that had never existed before. A science fiction film that would make every previous science fiction film obsolete. He partnered with Arthur C. Clarke, the visionary writer whose ideas about space and human evolution matched Kubrick's ambition. Together, they would spend 4 years building 2001, A Space Odyssey from nothing. He demanded special effects that had never been attempted. He demanded perfection from every department, and when perfection wasn't delivered, he demanded they start again. By 1968, the budget had ballooned to $12 million, more than double the original estimate. MGM executives were terrified. They had funded a film they didn't understand, directed by a man who refused to explain it. And then came the premiere. The scene revealed the world premiere of 2001. A Space Odyssey took place at the Uptown Theater in Washington, D.C. on April 2, 1968. MGM had invited critics, industry executives, and Hollywood elite. By some accounts, over 200 audience members walked out before the film reached its intermission. They were bored. They were confused. They didn't understand what they were watching or why they should care. The Dawn of Man sequence dragged. The space station docking felt interminable. The critics were savage. One reviewer called it a catastrophic failure. Another described it as somewhere between hypnotic and boring. The Hollywood Reporter suggested the film would destroy Kubrick's career. That night, while the premiere party continued without him, Kubrick disappeared into the editing room at MGM's facility.
The 18 on the camera, the 25 in your pocket.
We'll bring Jack straight in, Stanley.
And the 14.5 in somebody else's.
He worked through the night. By dawn, he had identified 19 minutes of footage that had to be removed. But here is the mystery that has haunted film historians for over 50 years. Kubrick never documented exactly what he cut. No detailed notes survive. No editor's logs specify which scenes were removed. The picture is incomplete, but the pieces suggest something remarkable. Kubrick didn't just trim the film, he transformed it. Why it was cut. The 19 minutes that Kubrick removed weren't random trims for pacing. They were deliberate amputations of content that explained too much. Based on historical accounts and production records, several categories of footage were eliminated. First, Kubrick cut transitional dialogue. The original version included more verbal exchanges between astronauts, more casual conversation that humanized Bowman and Poole. Second, he cut establishing shots and scenic transitions. The premiere version included extended sequences of spacecraft moving through space, of the station rotating, of the lunar shuttle descending. These shots were technically magnificent, showcasing the groundbreaking special effects that had consumed years of production. Kubrick stripped these away, leaving only the pure mystery of the black slab. This was the most painful decision. Kubrick had spent years working with Arthur C. Clarke to develop the mythology behind 2001. The film worked not as a narrative, but as a journey, and journeys don't require maps. Kubrick cut every moment that functioned as a map. The editing took less than a week. By April 10th, the revised version was being shipped to theaters. Most audiences who saw 2001 in its wide release never knew they were watching a different film than the one premiered in Washington. The 19 minutes simply ceased to exist in any publicly accessible form. Kubrick never apologized for the cuts. He never acknowledged them as a response to the disastrous premiere. What the removal changed. The 19 minutes didn't just make 2001 shorter, they made it eternal. There is a principle in art that Kubrick understood better than any filmmaker before or since. The theatrical version of 2001 was something else entirely. It was a religious experience disguised as a movie. It demanded that audiences abandon their expectations and surrender to pure image and sound. There were no answers because Kubrick had cut them all away. This removal transformed how people engaged with the film. They stopped asking what it meant and started feeling what it meant. Every great science fiction film that followed learned this lesson. Blade Runner leaves its central question unanswered. Solaris refuses to explain its ocean. Arrival trusts viewers to piece together its non-linear structure. Under the Skin offers no context whatsoever. All of these films owe their approach to the night Kubrick sat in a Washington theater and realized his masterpiece was dying. The human cost. The deletion left casualties no one talks about. Keir Dullea and Gary Lockwood, who played Bowman and Poole, had shot extensive material that humanized their characters. Conversations about their families, reflections on the mission. When Kubrick cut this material, he reduced them to ciphers, cold professionals whose deaths registered as intellectual events rather than emotional ones. Dullea in particular felt the loss. In interviews years later, he described scenes that no longer existed, dialogue he had carefully prepared that vanished from the film entirely. His performance as Bowman became iconic precisely because of its blankness, but that blankness wasn't always the intention. There had been more. Kubrick simply decided more was wrong. The special effects team suffered differently. Douglas Trumbull and his artists had spent years creating shots of unprecedented beauty and technical complexity. Many of those shots were in the 19 minutes. Spacecraft approaches that took months to film. Station rotations that pushed the boundaries of what cameras could capture. All of it cut because beauty without purpose was killing the film's momentum. Trumbull understood the decision intellectually. He knew Kubrick was right. But watching years of work vanish from the final cut left scars that never fully healed. The effects that survived made cinema history. The effects that were cut became ghosts, legacy, and broader impact. The removal of the 19 minutes didn't just save 2001. It invented a new category of cinema. Before Kubrick's cuts, science fiction was expected to explain itself. Audiences wanted to understand the technology, the aliens, the future. Films delivered exposition because exposition was considered necessary. How else would viewers follow the story? Kubrick proved that following wasn't the point. Experiencing was the point. The theatrical 2001 didn't ask audiences to understand the monolith. It asked them to feel awe in its presence. It didn't explain the Stargate. It pulled viewers through it. Understanding was irrelevant. Transcendence was everything. This approach revolutionized how filmmakers thought about audience intelligence. Kubrick trusted viewers to bring meaning to the film rather than demanding meaning from it. He treated audiences as collaborators rather than consumers. The 19 minutes he cut were training wheels. Their removal forced audiences to balance on their own. The ripple effects transformed cinema. Christopher Nolan's Interstellar explicitly borrowed 2001's structure while struggling to match its mystery. Denis Villeneuve's Arrival and Blade Runner 2049 operate in the space Kubrick created. But the influence extends beyond science fiction. Every filmmaker who trusts silence over dialogue, image over explanation, experience over narrative owes something to that night in April 1968. Kubrick watched his film fail, retreated to the editing room, and emerged with a new grammar for cinema. Kubrick cut convention itself from his masterpiece. MGM executives who had feared disaster watched the revised 2001 become a cultural phenomenon. Young audiences returned repeatedly, treating the film as a trip, a meditation, a rite of passage. The confusion that had driven crowds from the premiere became the film's greatest asset. People wanted to be confused. They wanted the mystery. Kubrick had gambled that audiences were smarter than the industry believed. The 19 minutes were his admission that even he had underestimated them. So here's the question that defines the legacy of 2001. Was cutting the 19 minutes the moment the film became immortal? Or do you wish Kubrick had trusted us with the answers he hid? If videos like this change the way you see the films you thought you knew, subscribe and stay with us. Because the most profound thing about 2001, A Space Odyssey, isn't what Kubrick showed us. It's the 19 minutes he made sure we would never see.